Mr. Harvey, they're having a small problem downstairs, so we're going to hold off going live for just a minute.
Thanks for the update, Stephen.
Shoot.
If you just joined us, we're waiting for Home TV to get the technology engaged here. Stephen should give us the go-ahead in just a second.
And you've got the go-ahead. Everything's going perfectly down there right now, and we are live.
Okay, let me call the meeting to order. I have just a couple minutes after 7 o'clock, and the item first on the agenda, of course, is approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any additions they would like to make to the agenda?
Under new business, there's the topic of a grant for next year for the Environmental Commission, and maybe Phil can speak to that.
Okay. You're referring to the, I believe it's $10,000. Is that right, Leroy? Okay. Any other additions to the agenda? Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? Okay, Bill. Jim seconded. All, please raise your hand if to approve the agenda. Okay, are any opposed? Okay, moving right along. We're of course up to the minutes. And again, does anybody have any corrections or additions to the minutes? Okay, hearing none. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Please raise your hand. Rose, okay. Can I hear a second? Okay, Bill, okay. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Am I doing that too quick, Leroy, or can you get the it okay?
I can get the I can get it okay. And Luca,
Okay.
if you want to raise your hand, that's fine too.
Okay.
Or not raise your hand, whatever.
Okay. Is there?
I didn't know what I was allowed to do.
Is anybody opposed to approving the minutes? Please raise your hand. Oh, hearing none. Okay, moving right along. Public remarks. Stephen, do we have anybody who'd like to make public remarks?
We can, of course, take comments 517-349-1232. There's nobody in the attendee area to raise their hand, but that would also be acceptable. If you want to just continue on, I'll let you know if any calls come in, but I don't expect any based on the attendance right now.
Okay, thank you. We'll have Leroy?
Kendra, who's joining us as a panelist, may have some comments later in the meeting, and she was suggested as a potential speaker, but rather than do an entire green theme, she thought she might chime in on a couple of the topics on our agenda. So I just invite her to chime in as she feels appropriately, if that's okay with everyone.
Sure. Kendra, do you want to make comments at this time? Okay, will there be an
No.
opportunity?
No, I'm just interested in seeing how this goes. I'm a resident interested in green infrastructure and have some experiences, particularly regarding the wetlands. So,
Okay. Well, of course, there's an opportunity later in the meeting at the end for public comments again.
Okay,
And,
cool. Okay, thank you.
Moving right along, new business. Leroy, you had added the new grant. And so I guess Phil, maybe you could give us a little background?
Sure, I'd be glad to start. And with Trustee Wazinski here, she can add more and I'll save some time for her to discuss it as well. The final budget meeting was approximately 3 weeks ago, and the board made a few changes to the budget. The most salient of those was to add $300,000 to the solar infrastructure, to go from $100,000 to $400,000. And the second was to renew the $10,000 grant that the board provided with the Environmental Commission this year, which, as you all know, you used for the tree initiative. So the board is we're in a good position. Our budget's in a good position. Our reserve funds are still strong. Essentially, revenue sharing has been, with the CARES grants, we didn't take the $1 million hit in revenue sharing. We feared we were going to. So the budget's looking good for this year. We're going to take a loss in revenue when commercial real estate assessments go out in December, and those are done because our commercial real estate is based on sales, and no surprise to anyone that commercial enterprises in the township have all had, virtually all had, a significant drop in sales this past year. The exception perhaps of the big box stores. So we're anticipating that, particularly from the mall and some of the surrounding stores and the restaurants. But overall, most of our revenue, 95% of it, is coming from residential property tax that's paid, and residential property values have stayed high, so our budget remains solid. And so as trustees and board members, we decided to make this amendment to help us to get to our sustainability goals, in particular to be in the 2030 goal for the township to be entirely on renewable energy. So we made that move. We made that a change to the budget. In terms of this commission and the tree initiative, you could certainly do something like that again, but I think the tree initiative is popular enough and we're getting enough feedback that if you come up with something that different, we might be able to come back to the board, depending on where the budget is next summer, and ask for a budget amendment for a standalone tree initiative, because we got that much good feedback from it, and it's just such a huge asset to the township. So it's your $10,000 again to decide how you want to use it, and perhaps we can get it used and spent and out there doing good work even earlier in the year than last year. Courtney, do you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, Phil. That was great. The only thing I might add is in the budget as well, is we appropriated $30,000 to our diversity, equity, and inclusion workforce. So that can complement some of the work that's being done here with environmental justice. So it's something to think about how we can continue to coordinate. And I can give an update on the DEI work group a little bit later. And
It sounds like from what both of you have said that you don't have much guidance for us from the Board of Trustees, what we might consider. So it's kind of like kind of open for us to, I guess, to do some brainstorming and kind of think about where the money can best be used.
Exactly. We rely on the expertise that exists on this commission you all are the scientists and the researchers and the activists and the students that have this environmental background that makes you excellent environmental commissioners. And so I think if we did try and tell you what to do with the money, we would be overstepping our role as board members. This is the expertise we're looking to hear from you, and recommendation we want to hear from you.
Well, my personal perspective is that this is something that, you know, the commission should give some real thought to. You know, I mean, obviously what we can consider is so many different types of things, and there are so many different kind of priorities, but I think it might be useful at this time for, you know, anybody on the commission to kind of maybe suggest some ideas, at least to get us thinking about what we might decide. I don't think we will want to decide anything this evening, but I think it might be helpful for any of you to kind of throw out some ideas for us to consider. So anybody have some kind of thoughts, ideas? Oh, yeah, Bill?
Tying to our agenda this evening, I think we're investing some energy in green infrastructure. And given the huge success that I think we'll hear about later on this evening of the tree planting effort, something that was in the realm of a demonstration or a public outreach sort of project around green infrastructure, whether it's rain gardens or other things we might consider, is one thing that we might look at.
Yeah, other comments or thoughts? Rose?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Just following what Bill says, I agree. I've also been thinking a lot about education. I think one reason that the tree planting has been so successful is that it's right there for all the students and everybody who's going to school to see. And, you know, a lot of students took part in that. I've been thinking a lot about green roof, because that's something that's not a part of our code yet. But maybe if we could do a green roof project involving the students at one of the schools or one of the sites there, that might be just one way to direct, I don't know, that idea.
Yeah. Other ideas or thoughts? It's kind of open season, so I like both the ideas that have been thrown out so far. Yeah. Other ideas? Yeah, Ned, go ahead.
Well, I mean, we've bounced this around many times. We sort of tried to get information and so forth, but you know, the issue of porous pavement as a kind of standard practice for whenever a business is making a parking lot, that kind of thing. I feel as though we still haven't found a way to somehow make the information available and encourage people to at least include that, the possibilities in their thought processes whenever they're designing these things. And just sort of for my own information, and partly because our tiny little postage stamp of a driveway is slowly falling apart anyway, I actually just called up a paving company the other day. What is it? It's one of the most ones I see cited most often in the concrete as I drive around. Anyway, and I just said, what do you guys think about porous pavement? And they basically just said, oh, it's a total waste of time, you know, that's impossible, forget it, you know, it has to be vacuumed and all these things. And I mean, so as with any sort of entrenched set of practices, I just feel as though it's very easy for people to not keep these things in mind. And yet there are places and there are practices that at least some people have found ways to use in a practical way. And I feel as though that's an opportunity that the Environmental Commission, you know, if we could help people simply find resources to evaluate those kinds of things. And we've got a heck of a lot of non-porous surface in this township, and we are certainly not moving in the direction of decreasing it. So I really wish that we had, I mean, it's sort of the same conceptual, philosophical idea as the green roof. I like that idea too, but but there's a lot of pavement, and if we could have much more of it porous, that would be great. And people say, oh, well, winter, it freezes, it heaves and stuff like that. But I know of places that are paved and porous. Like, for example, the parking lot of the, what am I trying to say? The meeting house up on Turner Road, Turner Drive, the Quaker Meeting House. That's just a tiny little parking lot. That one's not porous asphalt. It's blocks embedded in sand and gravel, but they're embedded deep. And so it's been there for several years and it still seems flat to me. All I'm saying is I feel like we've talked about it a lot of times and we haven't really found ways to help, say, people building a house or paving a road or whatever to access that information.
Rose?
Well, on taking that idea, could we maybe do a case study? Could we maybe do some sort of educational or outreach again at the school? Could we maybe set something up that where we did a few different types of pavement all next to each other, and then over the course of time, it could be used as a resource for people to check it out, but it could also be a way for students to learn about those different practices and materials. I don't know, that's a stretch, but
No, I love that idea because of course that's, people are, well, I should let Luca talk, but people are just learning to drive and they're paying attention to, I'm taking my car to school, so they're going to be parking in different places. So yeah, if you had sort of little test zones and you looked at how they performed over the years, I mean, this is exactly, you want to have young people be the advocates who are saying, look, I know this works, I've seen it. I think that's a really great idea.
I
Sorry.
see Luca shaking his head, so yeah, go ahead, Luca.
I had a question for Rose. So, what schools? So we're thinking the high school, the Oakland High School. Yeah, because for my personal experience, we've had problems with parking in the past or parking space, and so I do like opening that up to the students. I like that idea, but I don't know exactly where we would want to put that, because if it did cause problems to the parking lot, as in that we were stating, that Ned stated that like if something cracked or whatnot or didn't work during the winter, like what would we do because we're struggling already on parking spaces. What do you think we could do to combat that?
I think that it could also take place over at Chippewa, where they have the zombie apocalypse tennis courts right now. And it doesn't seem like anybody's, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like those tennis courts are kind of overgrown and not in use. So maybe it's not directly where people are parking, because I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. Maybe it will pose some sort of hazard. Maybe if we pour some things that don't go well, maybe we don't want people actually parking on them. But it does seem like over at Chippewa, I could be wrong, but it does appear that there's some unused, overgrown space there.
Yeah, I have my baseball field is right next to that, so I walk through there a lot. So I probably notice one tennis player every month or so playing there, and we have tennis courts at the high school, Kinawa and Chippewa, and so the Kinawa and Chippewa ones are both in disrepair. I think Kinawa got repaired, but Chippewa is the one I've noticed the least. So I really like that idea.
Can we just get the zombies to keep on putting holes in the ground and to, make sure that the drainage works?
Should we start a subcommittee?
Zombie subcommittee.
No, but maybe this is a natural extension of the tree team. I mean, I don't know if this is something that the tree team's going to take on, just so we don't eat up a bunch of time right now.
Well, I think that's an excellent idea, because it'd be useful, I think, for us to have some time between this meeting and the next one, just for people to give it some thought and maybe come up with some other ideas. But in order to move this thing along in what's been thrown out, I think sounds interesting to me and promising. And if a few of you would like to kind of do some research on that concept you've just been discussing between now and the next meeting, that wouldn't preclude other ideas, but at least us keeps us moving, kind of maybe figuring out some of the practicalities of what's already been suggested. Ned and Rose, it sounds like you two would be the core of a committee. Does that sound good to the two of you? Ned, do you have the time?
Being an academic type, I always like to, you know, pull up reading material. The problem is I'm very bad at summarizing it and reporting it, because once I've read it, I feel like, oh, well, you know, everybody knows that. So yes, I want to be part of the conversation. I'm not sure I want to be part of reporting on it, but yes, I'd be happy to do some poking around. In fact, I just found a report from 2015 by Minnesota Department of Transportation. It says permeable pavements in cold climates, state of the art and cold climate case studies. I mean, I'm read it. I don't know what it says. I hope it comes up with some positive messages, but you know, this kind of stuff, it's not very hard.
Now, in addition to Ned and Rose, does anybody would like to join the poking around team to kind of see what you can come up with? Anybody want to, we don't have to have more than two, but I don't see any.
I will be happy to chime in. When we were working on the green infrastructure map that Cliff inspired, there were a few examples of permeable pavement with already in the township, some with not so great experience, but I'd be happy to share some of that. I also wanted to just briefly mention that I ran into Emma today, and she mentioned that the ditches in front of the farmers market there's no real plan for those, and they might be a nice demonstration area for a rain garden or some other type of green infrastructure. But just to throw that idea out there, and I like the idea of talking more about this at the next meeting or future meetings.
Okay, it sounds like, Rose and Ned and Leroy, do you want to have a short meeting between now and the next meeting just to kind of chew over this idea of the school project with the forest pavement? Or do you want to just kind of do some searching around and then just the two of you kind of, or three of you report back to us?
I'd be up for meeting for 20 minutes or half an hour. I still want to push my idea of the of looking into green roof too.
Okay, good.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I think if we have a few, Leroy's just throwing out another idea, rain garden near the farmer's market. If we have a few ideas to kind of toss around next meeting, I think that would be very helpful and would kind of move this process along pretty quickly. But Leroy, do you have some experience or do you need to talk more to Emma about the rain garden idea, or is that something that could be explored? Or
yeah, I will just, other people may have heard about this concept as well, but certainly Luann, the grand opening was today for the farmers market. Some of you may have been there, and so there's a lot of attention on the farmers market. This might be natural. So perhaps if folks could forward, I don't know if this subcommittee wants to take on the entire project, but we could start to collect ideas and go through them as we did earlier with the first project. I'd be happy to take ideas and assemble them for our discussion next time. Go ahead.
And Leroy, would you facilitate a meeting between now and then, at least between you and Ned and Rose?
Sure.
Other thoughts or comments? Jim?
Yeah, the rain garden idea is pretty attractive to me. I was involved indirectly with the Ingham County Drain Commission when they were doing the Tower Garden. And so we've got, it's been about 10 years now. There's about 10 years of experience there at the tower area that we should be able to pull some information from and perhaps get the Drain Commission to give us some perspective on what happened or didn't happen. So there's that information available.
Bill?
I
I
just wanted to
know-
put a place marker in that there were discussions about tree planting at both high schools. And my understanding is that because of the parking lot renovation and other big projects going on in Hazlet, there was less energy there. So the efforts got concentrated at Okemos. And as we move forward, I just wanted to remind us that we want to keep a balanced perspective. That's all.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Bill, about how that we don't want to seem like we are flooding the northern half of the township. But you know, I know very little about rain gardens, but my guess is they're very labor intensive to construct. And so the idea of involving students in them is a great idea because they have a lot of energy and a lot of often more time and the enthusiasm for it. If we did that and we had maybe a competing rain gardens, one in Okemos and one in Hazlet, and let the schools compete, which could be a great way to build some school identity. When you involve students, you can then involve service clubs that love to fund student projects. I know the Kiwanis does, I know the Rotary does, but we could possibly take this $10,000 and leverage it for considerably more by using that as the starting money and then challenging the students to go out and get additional funding as they need to for these demonstration projects.
Well, certainly the roundabout on Bircham Drive that Leroy kind of initiated, I know had a lot of student labor, which was very helpful for that rain garden where Park Lake and Bircham come together. So that would be interesting to have a friendly competition in a project in two parts of the township. Yep.
And while we're talking about students, I want to thank Luca for your being part of the tree initiative and bringing a lot of your friends with you on Saturday. You guys and girls did a lot of the heavy lifting and work, and we did accomplish a lot on Saturday, and it wouldn't have been possible without that great student representation we had. So thank you, Luca, for your recruitment efforts.
Yeah, it was a little hard because Action, they weren't a lot, or their kind of thing for Okemos. They have that Action. They weren't allowed to do for coronavirus. They weren't allowed to go to organized groups, so I kind of had to contact a lot more people to because I couldn't have Action send out a big email.
Okay. Well, you clearly succeeded, so good work.
Well, we got 3 good ideas on the table, and more may be coming. So other thoughts before we kind of move down the agenda? And if anybody has additional ideas beyond the 3 that have already been suggested, just email them to Leroy so we can get them on the agenda for the next meeting. And, you know, we'll have some kind of poking around between now and then to get more specific. This will be a last chance for anybody to kind of throw in some ideas. Okay, I don't see any hands. Okay, moving along to the, well, the green infrastructure audit dialogue. And Cliff or Leroy, you know, I noticed that there's quite a few recommendations there. And I'm wondering if one of you would like to suggest how we can best proceed in kind of reviewing, digesting, because I'm assuming that our purpose here is to kind of review what Leroy sent out with the agenda, and at some point pass it along to the Planning Commission for their consideration. But Leroy?
I guess I would invite Cliff to just do a 47-second PSA. Obviously, there's a lot of depth. I really like the idea. Most of the suggestions that he had seemed to be pretty straightforward, and I'm really thrilled that we have such a supportive group of trustees and board members that are, I think, willing to take a serious look at whatever we recommend, and that includes, you know, we're relying on Cliff to kind of guide us here. So I'm also excited the fact that this is of regional interest, and the potential for partnering with other local jurisdictions. Cliff mentioned that the Lansing Township, Delhi Township are interested in the same thing, and we might have a stronger case if we're joining forces with other municipalities. But it seems like this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think this also relates to some of Kendra's interests. So Cliff, I think I took more than 47 seconds, so you can have at least 53 seconds.
Thank you. And Laura, your audio was a little choppy for me, so just stop me if you can't hear me. Yeah, that was the only time that it was like this. So just wave if you have problems with my microphone. So yeah, like the last time we met, you know, I talked about these recommendations, and they are not only what I would consider the low-hanging fruit, but just like the realistic things that the township can pursue, because a lot of the things related to the regulated stormwater program are handled by the drain office. So your post-construction standards, your construction stormwater, all those things that are related to the really technical design standard, you have limited jurisdiction over. So the focus of a lot of these recommendations are, you know, purpose statements, making your desires for more green infrastructure known, defining what green infrastructure is, and then opening up, you know, barriers to implementation just with small language tweaks. I've repeated many times, but you know, saying something as simple as the landscaping plan can be altered to accommodate stormwater control design. Something like that that lets a developer know that they have some leeway if they want to try to implement green infrastructure, rain gardens or something, rather than having to do both. They're gonna, you know, dictate their planting scheme based off of what the standards are, and not try to, you know, work that into a vegetated stormwater control measure if they don't have to. So just by opening that up, you make it a little more likely for them to take advantage of that. But like I said, a lot of the hand in the design standards and the real power over new development and redevelopment is coming from the drain office, which they're very pro green infrastructure. Obviously, they're known for taking a very natural path. It's just, as far as this exercise, there's a lot of components of that workbook, the audit tool, that are just not applicable to the township. So these are the recommendations from the sections that I figured made sense for the township to at least take a look at. But then again, you know, these are decisions for this board and this township to make, not me. Those are just the stuff that I consider fairly doable. So I'm just curious, has anyone taken a look at this since the last time we met? Have any questions? Like I think I mentioned last time, I kept the notes and the ideas very vague and just kind of general, because like I said, that's not for me to decide. And plus when you get into ordinances, there's all these other, you know, legal considerations and stuff you need to consider. So my recommendations on that front are pretty minimal in this document, but that's where I'm hoping that this body can kind of offer me guidance, so I can kind of help facilitate the next step of this process.
Rose, did you have a question?
No, well, there was one of the points where you're talking about deep-rooted, rather than doing turf grass, doing deep-rooted plantings. Does that just mean things like wildflowers and sedum and that sort of thing, or what is meant by deep-rooted plantings, I guess?
Yeah, I should have been more clear, and that's where a definition in the code would help defining those things. But native plants are by nature deep-rooted. That's what makes them drought-resistant and more tolerable to varying conditions because they're just a lot deep, they have much deeper roots than your typical turf grass. So yeah, that's not really, that wasn't really like a true definition. That just my speak, I guess. There should have been more clear.
No,
Finds
I'm
me native plants.
cool. I'm so excited. I mean, some of these, I'm just like, yes, let's do this now. I feel like it's just a couple simple tweaks in the language. So I guess I'm wondering, like, how do we push this forward? Like, what's the next step here?
I would think that, so, I mean, again, all this is up to you, but you don't want to overwhelm the township board with, and the planning department with a bunch of recommendations. You could kind of split this into like a phase 1, phase 2 thing. Like your first step would be defining green infrastructure. You know, what is bioretention? What are stormwater trees? What's rain garden? What do you mean by all this stuff in the code? But then also adding the language that says, you know, we encourage this. And that doesn't, it's not very technical. That's just saying we want to see green infrastructure. And I think those purpose statements and things like, you know, you have goals for landscaping, like parking lot landscaping. The goals are listed currently say to provide shade, to provide cooling and all that stuff, but there's no mention of to provide stormwater control. So those things are very easy. They're not going to change the dynamic of your code in any technical way. But then your phase 2 ask, after you push those things through and, you know, kind of workshop what that looks like, the bigger task would be those things that are a little more technical, like reducing the amount of parking at new builds, saying, you know, okay, you need less per, you know, square foot or per, you know, capacity of a building. Those things are, I would consider heavier lifts just because it's more involved and not more impactful in terms of, you know, your green infrastructure goals, but just kind of more, it's a bigger lift, I think, to do that more technical things, changing anything with a number, you know. But that's just something I was thinking about today. We kind of talked about it this morning at the Meridian Green Team networking chat. I was just kind of thinking, if you wanted to split it up and do this kind of a phased thing, I think the natural first step would be these more purpose statements.
Cliff, you know, that sounds like a good strategy to me. What Leroy sent out, what you prepared, is it a mix of phase 1 and phase 2 actions, or is it really kind of phase 1 actions?
I would say there's a little bit of maybe phase 2 in there, but mostly phase 1. And then, you know, I don't know if you've taken a look at the actual audit tool, like the responses in that, you know, spreadsheet. That a lot of that stuff that I excluded would be either phase 2 or just not applicable to the township, as I understand it. But that doesn't mean that I could have missed something. So I definitely think that that's worth a look at this other component of this process, which is that spreadsheet. But the easiest first pass, I think, would definitely be the majority of stuff on this Word document.
So it sounds like you're suggesting that, you know, you could go back and kind of weed out the phase 2 recommendations and make it strictly a phase 1 document, and we could pass that along to the Planning Commission. And like you said, it would be a relatively easy task in the larger scheme of things to get us started.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I would recommend that path. But you guys know your Planning Commission and your board much better than I do. But
let's ask Bill what his perspective is, since he's on the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah, well, we talked in a little bit down into the weeds about this morning, but at the moment, the Planning Commission is working on both form-based code, which is focused on very small bits of the township, and the mixed-use plan unit development ordinance, which is focused on a slightly bigger portion of the township. So these suggestions are relevant to both of those ongoing discussions. I think you're right, John, that focusing on the definitional aspects as a sort of a first step makes a lot of sense. And our first crack at that was the input we had to the change in the high grass ordinance, where we were trying to suggest that certain things could be exempted, but we hadn't really chewed over which things might be exempted from this 6 inches or 8 inches regulation. And I think digging into that makes a lot of sense, whether it's about species or about the depth of the roots or however it is we go about doing that, figuring out what sort of vegetation we think in this area we want to be encouraging as a sort of a policy point before getting down into the details makes a lot of sense to me.
Other thoughts, comments? All right.
I don't know if this has already been done or if this is another angle that could occur simultaneously or if it should be put off to another time, but in chatting with Kendra, there's a lot already in our existing code of ordinances that is not well understood and that could be maybe better enforced or could be better described beyond just the 700-page document that's 99% of the population doesn't have a clue about. And I'm just wondering if there might be sort of a kind of a code of ordinances for dummies, or that's not the right word, but something that simplifies some of the key areas that we're concerned about, such as wetland maintenance or protection. Some of those areas that are already in there that could be just better defined and more accessible to people. And this is maybe opening up getting a little further into the weeds than we want to, this, no pun intended. But I just want to invite Kendra to her 30-second, if you want to echo that, or if anybody wants to address that comment. It seems to be related.
Sure,
Kendra,
thanks.
let me invite you to kind of jump in.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everyone. So what I learned through this entire process and trying to protect the wetlands here is that there are, the code is very difficult to understand. It's written with lots of legal words, and I think if we can just simplify it and make it at an 8th grade reading level, perhaps with some, definitions and practical suggestions, that would probably be helpful for people to understand what to do. I think for the most part, people want to do the right thing. They maybe don't know what that means. And so I think just making it clearer would be helpful.
From hearing what just was said from you, Leroy, and Kendra, it sounds like a significant task, needless to say, to take ordinances and kind of make them readable, understandable for the general population. And it sounds like that's a related but different activity than what we've been talking about here. So it sounds like that's something that should be done and maybe can be done at the same time, but is certainly different than the kind of green infrastructure audit phase 1 recommendations kind of moving ahead. Let me throw out the idea that unless anybody has further thoughts, it just makes sense to me that maybe we should kind of formally approve the idea that Cliff should go ahead and do a little editing, come up with some phase 1 recommendations, and then I would guess that a good way to communicate those is to basically pass them on to Bill, since he's on the Planning Commission, and he can kind of introduce them at the appropriate Planning Commission meeting. Am I Does that sound right, or what do people think? Cliff, Leroy, Bill?
That sounds good. I guess this is a question for Bill. How developed do recommendations need to be to go to the planning commission, or would it be appropriate to send these like general ideas? Hey, we want to do this type of thing. Could you guys figure out how to actually get the language, suitable for an ordinance? I guess, should I come up with some model language or something, or is that something that is not for me?
Yeah, I hesitate to ask you to invest more time without a clear sign from the Planning Commission that would be appear on an agenda. Because, as I say, we're already looking into the MUPUD and the form-based code. So expanding the reach into the weeds of the general code could be seen as challenging. But on the other hand, if it's posed as a sort of first step definitional exercise that could then inform the form-based code and the MUPD and the general code, I think that would be welcome. So I'm willing to put that to the Planning Commission at our next meeting. And if they give the green light to considering that kind of definitional discussion with some model language, then it would make sense for me for Cliff to invest some energy in that.
Cool. And like Leroy mentioned, my dream for this is for it to be a regional thing, at least have some regional impact that, will emerge out of this exercise. Because I'm the coordinator of the Greater Lansing Regional Committee for Stormwater Management. There's 17 different stormwater permitted communities in the Tri-County area who are members, been around for 20 years. Like all the pet waste ordinances in the region came out of that committee, like all this post-construction design standards, good housekeeping, pollution prevention manuals. So there's a history of that group taking these things, on as a region. And this falls in line with that. And this definitional stuff, this phase 1 type of recommendations would be the things that would be adopted regionally, presumably. Everyone else has specific, we have road commissions who are our members. We have, Michigan State, we have school districts, we have townships, cities, we have everyone. So everyone's code is going to be much different. And their jurisdiction over particular components of stormwater and green infrastructure will vary. But the things like defining bioretention, or what do you mean by a stormwater tree? Those are the things that they're pretty universal, and they probably already exist. I'm sure they do. I just need to find kind of like the industry standard. And I was thinking about reaching out to the author of this audit tool to see if she has any knowledge of any existing guidance documents. She's a professor of planning at UC Davis and owns her own planning company, consulting firm. And I saw her talk at a conference in Detroit. That's how I came across this tool. But I think she would probably know better than anyone if there's any existing boilerplate out there that we could use as a launching point. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of frame that I'm happy to dive in on all that, because there's going to be benefits beyond this particular project.
Well, Bill, would, from your perspective, since you're kind of carrying this information to the Planning Commission, would you like a motion, or would you like to just keep this more informal, where the idea is that the Environmental Commission chatted about this stuff, we thought it was worth pursuing, and that here it is? Or if you'd like it more formal, maybe you could make a motion that it kind of briefly describes what the two you plan to do.
I think a formal resolution or motion would be premature at this time. I was going to just put a little coda on what Cliff was saying, that I believe the audit tool we're using is from the Wisconsin Sea Grant. And I did come across earlier this week, kind of a related document from the Michigan Sea Grant. So there's also MSU resources and expertise looking into this issue, and I think it could be useful to bring that perspective in. But my intention at this point is to get a show of hands, straw poll from the Planning Commission if they're willing to consider a resolution coming from the Environmental Commission on this topic. And if there's a positive show of support with some sort of a sense of a timeline, then we can give that message to Cliff to invest.
Okay, sounds good. Other thoughts or comments?
Just to follow up on this idea that there's already a lot in the codes that we don't understand or are not properly enforcing or could be more accessible, that I'm willing to, I know Kendra's experiences with wetlands, if there was some sort of a handout, maybe Cliff already has something like this. I know there's a lot of good resources on his website that we could package that might help people who are living next to wetlands, or just want to keep that conversation going about how we can make that information more accessible, tell people gently what they can and can't do, and simultaneously encouraging more green infrastructure in neighborhoods. So this is something we've been talking about for months, but if you have thoughts on how that could move forward, or how we could work with you, Tri-County, to share some of the resources that are already out there, I think it'd be great. So getting back to the green infrastructure recommendations.
Well, Cliff, did you have a response to Leroy about, is there material already that exists that could be used for that purpose, the wetlands?
We have some old, really old brochures. So there used to be 11 topics that were required topics for communities to educate their citizens on, which included riparian, neighboring riparian owners, people who live on rivers and along wetlands and stuff. That was deemed like 5 years ago not really applicable to the MS4 program, so they dropped that as a requirement. So that wasn't included in our update, but we did like a big brochure and educational material revamp. But it's not very involved. It's not specific to your ordinances. Certainly, it's more just general, like, hey, if you live next to a wetland or a creek, if you want to be environmentally friendly, don't go mow your grass all the way to the side, leave a buffer and all that kind of very basic stuff. But there is definitely stuff out there. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the conservation districts has something, but I can definitely look into that, and I'm happy to help put something together too. Like I said a few times, I think, the GLRC is regionally funded, it's regionally organized, and the whole point is that everyone's on the same page. And so if there's something like that you guys want, I'm more than happy to, you guys are paying for it, so just let me know. So I'm happy to anytime help with stuff like this. So just a side note, but yeah, I'll take a look and see what is existing out there, and if we can't find anything, I'm happy to help put something together. One thing that this audit tool did cover was, it's like assigning a point person to be the guru for questions related to green infrastructure. Like if somebody has a question about rain barrels or rain gardens, there should be somebody assigned that would have all that information and just let everyone in the township know, oh, call, this person, employee. And then also including some sort of quick guide document of, what, not only, directions of how to install a rain garden, but like we've talked about this morning at the networking thing, some of the outreach I do when I promote rain barrels, I get an overwhelming number of people say, well, I want to do that, but it's illegal in Michigan, or it's illegal in the city that I live in. And I, luckily with Facebook and stuff, you can push back and say, you can engage them and say, actually, we're doing this because we're required to educate you on, the benefits and how you should put this, no one is forbidding you from installing a rain barrel, but I think if it may be because there's not, a whole lot of outreach from the community level. Like I, with my regional Facebook page, say, hey, do this, but it's a little different if somebody saw on your Facebook page, Meridian Township, did you know at Meridian Township, we encourage rain barrels. You can have as many as you want, because I know there's some states, like out in the West, there's limits like 100 gallons or something like that because of archaic water right doctrine and stuff like that. But just some clarity, like you said, not for dummies guide, but just like these hot topics that people want to know about, just a little more information than, they'd be able to pull out of an ordinance without, falling asleep trying to read the whole thing. So that's a good idea.
This may be unfair, but if I got any sort of question related to any of those sorts of issues, I would direct them to Leroy, and he might not know the answer, but he would probably kind of at least get people started and head them in the right direction. Wouldn't that be correct, Leroy? That we would.
I would say call John Sarver.
Well, that wouldn't help him.
For energy stuff. Anyway, I do that all the time. But anyway, thank you, Cliff. And thanks, John.
Okay, let's see. Shall we move right along? Well, we're up to any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, just getting back to the overall discussion, I just wondered while we're waiting kind of for a response back from the Planning Commission, if it might be advisable or worthwhile just to see a proposed breakdown between kind of the phase 1 and phase 2 that maybe the commission could look at as well again.
Yeah, Cliff, would that be pretty easy for you to do, Cliff?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. The one thing I just want to stress again is that these decisions of what is good for the township aren't for me to decide. I'm happy to put that together and recommend something. But if you guys want to distill that down and take a look and say, I just want to make sure you're not just saying, oh, Cliff said it's good, let's pass it on through. I want to make sure that it's something that you guys actually want. But yeah, I'm happy to do that. And I can go back through that spreadsheet and kind of pull in some of those phase 2 things that are what I see as possible for the township. Excluding like the drain commissioner jurisdiction and all that. There's a lot of blank pages on the audit tool because of how the drain office jurisdiction works.
Maybe
yeah, I'm happy to do that.
It seems like the trustees, given their interest in this, might provide some impetus in terms of just, yes, we want to include green infrastructure in our future, protecting our existing and expanding. That might, the staff often take direction from the trustees, and maybe there's a way to also, as Tom says, we can kind of move forward on a couple of different levels. And not my place necessarily to make this decision, but I think both Courtney and Phil and other township trustees have made it pretty clear that they support what we're doing, and I don't think they disagree with anything that you've come up with, Cliff. But go ahead, and Courtney, if you have other suggestions, if you like the direction of things, we can just go with this plan here.
I would just say if Cliff's willing, I don't think it will go to waste. I understand what Bill's saying, that, the Planning Commission's working on a couple things right now, but we can always have a presentation at the board to get board discussion and to get board thoughts, and that could help us direct which direction or how much effort we put into this at this point. So the board's always willing to listen, and I think Phil and I would certainly support. So I don't want to speak for Phil, but would certainly support listening and hearing what the staff including Derek and Mark and Frank might have some input on that as well. So I would support, you know, maybe I can ask the supervisor to put something on the agenda for a presentation.
Phil did ask about a potential presentation on the 20th of October related to the tree project. Maybe this could be a natural fit with that, or maybe that's too soon, but anyway, thank you, Courtney.
That sounds good. Okay, moving along. Nothing to report from the chair. That leaves us to the staff report. Leroy?
Thank you. I think my staff report will come through the various committees. Obviously, the big things are the tree initiative, and just real excited about that. But it was hinted at by Phil earlier. We had a great day. Weather cooperated, and got 40 large trees in the ground. Several of you were there, and so I invite you to chime in on that. This is on other places on the agenda, so we can come back to it. But it was a great opportunity to build connections with the local schools, build some social capital. I think it opened up the door for future projects, and built a strong relationship with the Conservation District. And also several of the departments in the township were involved, parks. And so it was really nice to get them involved. Local businesses, Michigan Demolition and Excavation, just did a stellar job drilling the holes and helping move the trees off the truck. So it was just a heartwarming experience. I'm glad to be part of it. And I really appreciate the support of the tree team, not just in conceiving of the project, Jim and Rose and Bill and others, but also showing up at the day and making it happen. So that took a lot of energy. It also involved work at the farmers market. So the green team helped distribute trees. Conservation District helped give out 400 trees at the market. That was happening simultaneously during the tree day on Saturday as well. Our new human resource director, Abby, was out there giving out 100 trees, helping Conservation District do that. So there were, so anyway, we can chime in more on that. The recycling initiative also sort of came to a head the Saturday before, and several of you were at that event. Bill was breaking down cardboard. Luca and his mom were working side by side, unloading cars of electronics. And again, another heartwarming activity that involved multiple jurisdictions as well as multiple groups of students and other partners. So thank you everybody for making those things happen. That's really the bulk of it. We have started to contact contractors who apply seal coat, and as you know, that ordinance is now in effect, and the word is gradually getting out on that. But that's the key aspect of my update for now.
Leroy, the pavement ordinance is in effect, correct? And people have already been registered, or whatever the proper word is, and approximately how many would have, so nobody can be doing work in the township until they are registered, and that's happening gradually now. The word is getting out. Is that what you're saying?
The timing is not optimum because there's only a week or two left in the seal coat applying season, and most of the contractors have not heard necessarily about our ordinance, so it's kind of a soft rollout. I don't know that we want to be strongly enforcing our ordinance until contractors know more about it. I've contacted ones that have emails, but not all of them do have emails. So I'm more in favor of doing it, of starting the passive enforcement in the following season. Trying to get seal coat applicators registered during the next few months and ready for next season when they fill up with their new material.
And Lorraine, are you responsible for getting the word out?
I've had some help from our Denise Green, but so far it's just been me. And Home TV has also put out a press release, but how many contractors have seen the press release is probably minuscule.
Will there be an effort, or well, I guess there is an effort already to, because I saw something in the email newsletter to let the whole township know that this is now a new requirement, so that the homeowners and businesses will be aware that they should be looking for contractors to do it that way.
Yeah, I think ongoing education will make sense. So appreciate the reminder about that.
Okay. And well, let's move on to Environmental Justice Study Group.
So that's me, and I didn't pull it together and organize a meeting. I'm sorry about that. I guess I'm wondering who would like to be part of this group, because I have a lot of half-baked ideas and I don't really know where to go with them. I do want to meet up with Courtney at some point and hear more about your work group, because I feel like maybe I should team up with you, because I guess I'm not sure who's with me here on this stuff.
Well, you could put me down for being kind of in the loop. Who else would like to be in the loop on this? Raise your hand.
Pressure. You don't, I mean, this doesn't have to be a group that meets regularly.
Right.
I'm just not quite sure how to push things forward. And I think it's worth pushing a few things forward still.
Well, I just saw Bill raise his hand, so there's
Well, I was actually going to volunteer. Maybe this is an off-the-wall idea, but I recently learned through the magic of LinkedIn that Cliff actually has considerable connection to indigenous communities in Michigan and around issues of water rights and access to natural resources. And that may be an issue worth pursuing.
I really like the idea of partnering with the trustees initiative.
okay. Well, Rose, go ahead, Courtney.
So I think there's some overlapping work to be done, and Rose, we're in the same spot. Like, we know that something has to be done, and we're at this like very slow pace of moving forward. So I feel your pain, at the township as well as the department, we're doing the same thing. So I think maybe what we could do is, and I was going to give a direct update on the DEI later, but maybe you and I can talk, and then maybe I can get you in touch with we can have a little bit bigger group meeting and see where maybe we complement as opposed to necessarily both riding side by side. So that might help with us both having a little bit more direction as well. So I'm 100% willing to do that. We can follow up after the meeting.
Okay, awesome. So I think that probably we should meet or talk, and then have another little meeting just with interested members from this group, that we can figure out what our priorities are for this group. Yeah.
I like that. And I can be a part of that initial couple conversations so that we have both perspectives, coming.
Sounds like a plan. Okay. Well, Sustainable Development Study Group, I don't really, do we even need this on the agenda? Because isn't that the green audit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless we want to simultaneously look for other opportunities, keep track of what East Lansing is doing. Talked about a sustainable building code. this is all sort of related. There could be some things developments that we can model or learn from as they evolve in East Lansing. And since Cliff is on that environmental commission, maybe he can keep us posted of those other opportunities.
Yeah, we haven't really met that much. We've met one time since the beginning of the pandemic. I think we're meeting next week though. So there hasn't been any activity. I think the last update that I think Kathy provided you would be the latest. I actually forget where we're at with it anyways, because it's been so long now. But yeah, I can definitely keep you posted on that as it comes through.
Thank you.
Well, I'm signed up for EGO is doing a webinar on the energy code. I'm gonna participate in that because I still have an interest in somehow thinking how an EV ready or solar ready code or ordinance might be put into effect. But you know, I'll attend that webinar and maybe it'll be helpful to us. Okay, tree team.
I just invite Jim or Luca or Bill to add anything that they want to about the tree day, or just comments about generally how things went, or might go from here. We've already got one teacher that's approached us asking, let's keep planting down quinoa.
Well, now Leroy or Jim, has the $10,000 been spent?
Haven't gotten the final accounting yet. We're working on that, so we should have something in the next few days.
But let me ask you, just since I haven't been involved in the discussion, so the farmers market activity and the Chippewa planting, is there any other activities planned, or is that kind of the project?
As far as I know, we're pretty much done. I would need to talk to Michelle. There may be a little bit of money left to do some signage, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Well, you know, I'm interested. Anybody on the tree team, just your comments on the project, or what you think maybe should be done in the future. Jim?
I was impressed with the quality of the people that came out. Luca apparently got a lot more than I imagined. It was a far better project than I thought. There were a lot of large trees put in. I think what I've seen just a couple of emails that have been passed around that it seems that the people at the least around Chippewa there were quite impressed with what happened. And I only hope that we'll be able to, and I rather suspect that most of the money has been committed, although I know less than Leroy does. But it'd be awfully nice if we could get some way to get something up to Hazlitt High School, get something along there too, because, you know, as people have said, this is a wonderful entrance. The trees that have been planted along there, it really does make a difference. And how you got all those people, Luca, is beyond me, but you pulled a rabbit out of the hat. As far as I'm concerned, I would not have bet that there could be that many people that enthused.
Bill?
Yeah, echoing everything that Jim just said. I got a late start that morning and I thought, oh goodness, I'm going to show up late and there's going to be all these trees to plant. And I got down there, was a whole army crawling across the grounds of Chippewa, and they'd all been signed in, they'd all gotten their orientation, they were all running around and doing things. And it was just a kind of a magical, really enlivening sort of event, especially coming on the heels of the huge mobilization around the electronics recycling event in that same parking lot. So within just a couple of weeks, in not really great weather, having so many people turn out to do things that they believe in is really energizing. But the other thing I wanted to underline is that beyond, in addition to the number of community members who were there, the number of connections that were made to other organizations and the partnerships that Leroy was able to craft is really crucial. I mean, I didn't count, but there must have been 100 shovels that showed up in various trucks and trailers and things. And the expertise, the devotion, those partnerships are crucial. I know that I heard that there was a little bit of, let me call it discomfort when the budget went to the township board and there was going to be some expenditure for consulting services to Ingham Conservation District. And I've said before, I think that was an excellent investment. And if I understand correctly, Leroy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but ICD ended up basically contributing a whole lot of trees, kind of matching what the township board contributed. So if I've got that right, either way, to me, it's magnificent and really energizing and encouraging and inspiring.
Yeah, they were a big part of the networking and the relationship building, and they hung in there till the end and remain enthusiastic about it. So hats off to Michelle Belasker, as well as Irene Cahill, who took a leadership role, the city forester for Lansing, and she came through as someone who just saw a lot of potential and took the shovel and went to town with the orientation. So
the other thing I was going to mention is in our discussion this morning, Cliff brought up state grant money that is available potentially to match something that township might want to do in the future. The deadline for this year just passed, but that gives us 12 months to plan for if we want to look for this in the future. There might be some other ways we can go about it.
this might also be a nice way to leapfrog into the Tree City initiative that Rose has suggested, and I don't know how to move that forward, but maybe that's something that we can keep on the burner.
I would really like that because I feel like, again, it'll be so simple to accomplish. Just a matter of time, the timing, really, I feel like.
Okay, and anything else before we move on? Okay, let's see, Board of Trustees.
I've been waiting on that. We do have a couple things. So I did want to do a little update on our diversity, equity, and inclusion work group. We had our first meeting with the directors at the township, and I wanted to say I wasn't sure how everybody might perceive and or receive this initiative, and there was a lot of excitement already around that, a lot of support. And quite honestly, I've learned that there's already a lot of work being done and a lot of policy already implemented, specifically with our police department. So because of that, we only got to hear from about half of the directors during that meeting. So we will do a follow-up meeting. In the interim, we wanted to do some more of a quantitative survey type to see where we're at in each department with respect to, diversity, equity, inclusion in their policies, as well as beliefs and behaviors. So working with Trustee Jackson and our new HR director, Abby Titoff, in developing that survey. So we implement that survey, get the results, and then have a follow-up meeting with the directors, present those results, as well as hear from the remainder of the directors. So the good news is that there does seem to be a significant amount of support around this. To speak a little bit to Rose's efforts as well is, that this is a big endeavor, and it's not supposed to happen overnight, right? This is a long-term movement as opposed to just a conversation. So initially we've kind of decided to work internally initially. So work with our staff and then move towards the community level. So I think it is a good time for us to start talking about that, how the EJ component plays a part in maybe not so much internally, some departments it will. I mean, our community development and, our engineering, things like that. But then more, where it's really going to make a difference is in that community level. So I would, we're so very just trying to figure out where to go next, but we are going to develop a task force, a true task force. And Rose, I think you're a fantastic addition to that. And I know you're a busy person. And but that would, I would certainly recommend you for a position on that board. So, we're making progress. It's slow, but we want it to be calculated and intentional. So just a little bit of update on that. And I mentioned that the manager had appropriated 30,000 to this initiative. So we have some funds if we need to bring in some experts, because I'm not sure any of us are experts in this or certainly don't feel, confident in leading, some of these efforts. So I think we can use that to our advantage. And I think it overlaps with Environmental Commission tremendously. And I just wanted to add to, I can't remember who brought up the marketplace greens ribbon cutting today. So that was fantastic. It's such a beautiful thing to see. I was on the Park Commission when this idea was being created, and Luann has this ability to have this foresight on what's going to happen, and I just couldn't grasp it, like how wonderful it was going to be. And the renditions looked fantastic, but they were brown and just kind of boring. And to go out there and to be out there, it's just beautiful. It's a place that I think Meridian has needed for so long, to have this like destination, right? And it connects to all the other things. It connects to all the parks and the trailways. So that was fantastic. But what I did learn today too, and I had left the Park Commission, so I didn't know, but they did consider a lot of environmental impacts with that development. So they do have some rain gardens that they have put there. So I would agree that there was nothing in the ditches, so there could probably be some improvement. But I know that they have designated rain gardens there. They also had a wastewater filtration system, so that it's filtering that water, that runoff, before it gets to the storm. So I thought that was something I didn't know either. But they're doing LED lights. They have bike racks, and we're putting solar panels on to energize the place, in addition to like the recycled plastic chairs and things like that. So the Park Commission, I think, did a really great job in considering the environmental impacts, that even though an outside farmer's market is fantastic, but they have considered those things too. So I know they would be open to more if in fact we did approach them with that. Other than that, the only other thing I guess I would mention is that I have some contacts for both green roofs as well as some permeable pavement that some folks with experience. Michigan Energy Options out of East Lansing has worked with permeable pavement in the past, and I have a relationship with them. So that's something that, I could certainly get us in touch with. And then I have another person at the department in environmental health that has had some recent experience in green roofs too. So I just want to offer that there. I'm always happy to make those contacts. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Brownfield Redevelopment Authority.
In our little group meeting when Rose and I chat about those things.
Well, Brownfield Redevelopment?
Nothing particularly exciting. There was a scheduled meeting, and then it got canceled because paperwork hadn't moved along fast enough. And then there was an ad hoc meeting, which basically was just about signing paperwork for a transfer of property, and this was for the Pine Village site that I discussed in the last meeting, the one that's up in Hazlet. Oh, wait a sec. So I'm sorry, I'm mixing it up. The Pine Village one is the one, the Pine Village subject matter is the one that got postponed until this month. And sorry, the transfer agreement that just basically needed to be signed was the Jolly Road, the 2360 Jolly Road brownfield plan. However, I actually physically missed the meeting because, to be quite honest, I overslept. It's a good thing they had a quorum, and it was a very small quorum, but the meeting was over in basically 10 minutes. They pulled out the paperwork, it needed a signature, and that's what they got. So there wasn't a lot of actual negotiation or new planning or evaluation of anything going on. So
it doesn't sound like you missed much.
No, it doesn't. But there's one coming up in the 20s of this month. So there will be more to discuss next month.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the energy team, you know, we've been doing some work on the solar home tour this month, and there's a Lansing area virtual solar tour that's pretty much all the there's 11 videos on YouTube, and most of them, vast majority, are from Meridian Township. Home TV has been very helpful in kind of promoting this virtual solar tour, and I checked earlier today because I got a baseline for how many people had already looked at these 11 videos from the Lansing area, and again, mostly Meridian Township. So since the tour started, we've had 61 viewings, additional viewings on YouTube, and I'll continue to monitor that. And also we'll be doing some additional kind of special promotions through Facebook, like promoting the EV charging video and the rooftop solar video. So I'll keep monitoring kind of how many additional viewings we have week by week during October, and see how that goes. But so far so good. I thought 61 additional viewings was pretty good. And Leroy, could you give us a status report on the two solar projects, the fire station and the farmers market, kind of where they are with the installation, or what the plan is?
Things are moving ahead. I think the paperwork is pretty close to complete. We're also waiting for consumers' permits. I think most of that information has been submitted. I've been a little out of the loop for the last week, but that's moving forward. There is some interest possibly in talking with our contractor about assisting with the project this coming year, rather than go out to bid again for, that's a time-consuming process. Maybe we can just extend the contract as we move forward on that. So I think it would behoove us as an energy team to talk about what makes the most sense in terms of a larger project, especially since we have some limited roof space. And whether we should be looking at a power purchase agreement and carports and things like that. But that's a topic for the energy team, I believe.
It's a great topic to have, with the generous budget from the township, the Board of Trustees. We're going to be able to make really good progress. So I think it'll be great for the energy team to struggle with providing some ideas on how that money could be spent.
The energy team typically meets on Zoom. If anyone's interested in tuning in, I can put you on the mailing list if you're not already.
Okay, moving right along. Green team.
Just very briefly, the Green Team is pretty thrilled about the recycling event. Some of you were, again, helping Tom. Tom was on traffic and also collecting addresses. We had 7 counties. People from 7 different counties showed up. We really had a good regional partnership on that. And so we're going to talk about, we don't know a lot about what's going to be, what the spring is going to look like. But we'll be talking about what worked, what didn't work, what improvements people might suggest. Tom's already had some ideas. Bill, anyone else who wants to throw in their ideas? Luca, yeah. I'm not sure if you can make the meeting, but it's tomorrow at 5:30, probably in the pavilion if the weather permits. So that's it. Unless anybody wants to add anything for the green team.
Okay, Land Preservation Advisory Board.
The board met last month. We met at the service center. I had a very short meeting and then walked across to the Central Meridian Highlands, which is the preserve right across Okemos Road there. Walked back through there and tried to look for possible locations that we might have some mitigation opportunities, some land banking or opportunities. All of this in conjunction with the Grand River corridor updates that are going to, I think, impact quite a bit of wetland. It's going to be, as we look, we were going to have a hard time finding any spots that we could say, oh, there's a good one. It's going to be up to the highway engineers, probably talk to our engineers as well as the land pres and perhaps even this committee to see what might be able to be done in there. It's going to be quite a project. We will have our next meeting next Wednesday. I haven't been able to schedule with Emma Campbell to determine what our agenda will be, so I can't fill you in on anything now. The deer program has already begun. There are 75 hunters on 40 township properties and another 20 private properties. So far, there have been, let's see, all the deer that are taken under our program are donated to the Okemos and Hazlitt food banks. We've already got 16 deer at the processor, so already moving along. Whether you've noticed or not on ballots coming up, the land preservation millage is being is on the ballot this time. Interestingly, we began this program in 2000 with a 0.75 mil, and 10 years later, we dropped it in half to 0.33 mils. And this time we're going back asking for 0.1 mil. I don't know where you go that the taxes are going down, but we're asking for 0.1 mil on our properties. Seemed like there was one other thing. I think that's probably about it. Got a lot of other things that relate to parks, but I'm representing Land Pres, and that's about all I can put in there without getting into a lengthy discussion.
Thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, Township Association and politics.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, I think you're all aware that the state budget is in place. So we talked about that a little bit at the last meeting, and I know the Treasurer Duchesne made reference to it as well. One thing I wanted to make the commission aware of, there is a package of bills, House Bill 6036 through 6039 on property assessed clean energy or PACE program. And some of you may know that the legislature a few years ago passed the PACE program for commercial and industrial properties. This package would apply it to residential properties as well. So a local unit of government could help finance energy related upgrades or renewable energy type projects on private property, residential property. So far, the package has had one hearing in the House Energy Committee. I don't really think it's on a fast pace, but not sure if it'll get done before the end of the year. But again, just wanted to make the commission aware that that bill package is out there.
Where can I find more information about that? Where's a good place to look?
Yeah, if you looked on the state legislative web page and just looked up the bill numbers, again, 6036 through 6039. It's actually a bipartisan package. A Republican has introduced 2 bills and a Democrat has introduced the other 2 bills. So I guess we'll just see where that goes.
Hey, Tom, I believe Ingham County has authorized a PACE program within the county. And I know a number of different cities have in other counties, but are you aware, have any townships actually got involved with kind of authorizing PACE programs on the commercial side?
Yeah, you know, I'm not aware specifically. It's possible that a handful may have actually done it, but just not made MTA aware of it. I know, for example, Ann Arbor has a program. There may be some communities surrounding that area that may have done it. I just don't know for sure.
Yeah, yeah, probably worth, you know, with it, it sounds like it's very possible it might pass, and with the residential being included, hopefully in the future, I don't know, that might be an opportunity for the township, or maybe it's something best left for the Ingham County. I don't know. I guess we could, yeah. But
yeah, would certainly be open to all local units of government, county, city, village, townships, under the legislation. So presumably, if the township were interested in a program, and obviously if the legislation did pass, they could pursue that. So
yeah, I know some people who do the commercial PACE program, so I guess I'll poke around to kind of see if it makes any sense for even a township to kind of look into it. But Ned?
I just have a question. So can you, first of all, can you remind me what PACE stands for?
I think it's property assessed clean energy, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
PACE.
Okay, so that was question 1. So it's somewhere along, you know, and this might be something that happened while my eyelids were down. I think I heard that there was a bill in the legislature potentially forbidding the sale of electric vehicles in this state. And obviously, what we're talking about here is more like solar, wind, etc. But I was just wondering how those, you know, are those things being considered in kind of alternate universes of each other? It just strikes me as kind of a whole contradiction in the collection of things that are being talked about. But I was just curious if is that correct, or am I just hearing?
Yeah, I'm not aware that legislation has actually been taken up for a committee hearing at this point. Again, I know the PACE legislation has been, but they haven't voted on it as of yet. But there is quite a bit of legislation that's been introduced regarding EV vehicles, but to my knowledge, I don't believe it's moved as of yet.
And I believe the bill, Ned, you're referring to is really, let's call it a Tesla bill. because dealerships don't
Oh,
want
okay.
Tesla or any manufacturer to be able to directly sell an electric vehicle. So, I mean, you can go down to Chevrolet or anybody else and buy an EV. But for some reason, the dealerships don't want manufacturers to sell directly.
Yeah, and I apologize. Ned, I didn't realize that's the bill you were referring to. I take my comments back. That bill was taken up in committee, I believe, week before last, and it was reported out to the House floor, but it's currently on the House floor, I believe, for consideration. But yeah, I think essentially what that bill does is to put in statute what the court decision rendered for Tesla, but it doesn't appear to apply to other EV manufacturers.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
Sure.
And let's see, Planning Commission.
Yeah, the Planning Commission has met a couple of times since we last met. The main substantive issue on the agenda was a rezoning that I don't see significant environmental impacts of, foster care facility up on Park Lake Road, along with the mixed-use plan unit development ordinance. So kind of quiet on the Planning Commission front.
Thank you, Ben.
And I'll go ahead and take Transportation Commission, which has not met since August. And I'm encouraging the Transportation Commission to keep up the momentum. And I noticed on the Township Board agenda, I believe on the consent agenda, was some street lighting down at Hagedorn and Mount Hope. And that's fantastic. That's a location that's needed it, and clearly the township got some feedback. And so in my view, a more active Transportation Commission is only a good thing, especially as we proceed towards the phase 1 of the Lake Lansing pathway, and making sure that there's a safe crossing of Hagedorn, which is going to be very, very tricky given the fact that that's at least 3, 4, depending on how you count on it, jurisdictions to make sure that township pathway users can get safely on and off campus. So I'm encouraging the Transportation Commission to be as attentive to that as it possibly can. That's it.
Thank you, Bill. And see, we're another opportunity for public comment. Is anybody kind of called in, or Kendra or anybody else? Would you like to make some remarks?
I have some things of interest, maybe. Well, one thing. So I'm on the board of the Middle Grand River Organization of Watersheds, MGRO, and one of our grand plans for the year was to bring the Wild and Scenic Film Festival to East Lansing in September. Obviously with COVID, that was impacted, but now we're pivoting to a virtual event. It's going to be a live virtual thing. We're working with the Wild and Scenic Film Festival, like main company, and a production company out of California to put this thing on. And so it's going to be like award-winning environmental and adventure films, and then filling the gaps between the videos will be clips highlighting our partners in the watershed, and the MidMeacs and the lower Grand group, the upper Grand group, and just kind of give people an idea of, get people all riled up and inspired to become stewards of the environment in their area, and then point them and their energy towards the organizations that need to channel that. So that's going to be on December 6th, and I just launched the website for it today. If you go to mgro.org/filmfest, or just mgro.org, you can find it. It's on the homepage. So we're excited. And I imagine you guys may be interested, so just want to put that plug out there.
You said December 6th, that's Sunday?
Yep, it's a Sunday evening. Figured there'd be a little less, competition. I mean, there'd be football on, but maybe it's a different crowd. But yeah, we're still putting things together and trying to get some like dinner packages with some local restaurants and stuff. But that's still in the works. But it's a fundraiser for MGROW. Supporting all the work that MGROW does, and yeah.
Thank you. Other comments before we adjourn?
I move to adjourn. I believe there's a debate coming up.
That's debatable.
Jim? Did you want to say something, Jim? Or are you making a motion to adjourn?
Seconding the motion.
Oh, okay. Okay. All in favor of adjourning?
I don't know where Bill is, where he's got all that sun behind him, but you can look behind me and you see it's gotten dark while we sat here.
Jim, you're definitely in the dark.
That's
Well, okay.
normal.
Thank you, everybody. Good meeting. Bye-bye.
Good meeting.
Bye.
Leroy, we should try and find you another microphone.